The sacred drum, is it the world itself? When Lin Dong heard what the sacred drum heavenly sovereign said, his heart jolted. He knew that a heavenly artifact, being such an ultimate existence, must have some connection to the world, but he never imagined that the artifact itself was the world. Indeed, the sacred drum is ranked 9th on the heavenly artifact ranking, a list of the greatest treasures in the world. And all the items on this list are not crafted, for they are the world itself. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign said with a smile. Haha, great artifacts are born, not made. Sovereign, what is this heavenly artifact ranking? I've never heard of it before, Lin Dong asked, glancing at the people behind him. Fan Yunzi and Xiao Yin also shook their heads, clearly unaware of this so-called heavenly artifact ranking. The heavenly artifact ranking was something I created on a whim in my younger days, a list I compiled myself. I rarely shared it with others, so it's understandable that no one else knows about it. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign chuckled before explaining the list to Lin Dong. I arranged 12 supreme objects of the endless world, which gave birth to the heavenly artifact ranking. It covers everything, from the first rank of supreme Dharmakayas to the first-ranked beast in the mythical beast record, the first flame in the 100 million flames ranking, the first thunder in the Great Thousand Heavenly Thunder Codex, the first ice in the extreme cold heavenly rankings, and even the heart of the Great Thousand Worlds. In total, there are 12 such existences. They are not what we commonly understand. All of them are based on the world itself, transcendent and supreme. They need no forging, for they are born from the world, and the sacred drum is barely ranked 9th. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign explained. Hearing this, Lin Dong and the others were stunned. They never imagined that someone could create such a terrifying ranking where each item, if placed in the Great Thousand Worlds, would be considered supreme. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign truly viewed the world with the eyes of a deity. So, what is the strongest item on this ranking? Lin Dong asked, eager to know what could possibly be ranked at the top. Heh, you don't quite understand my point. It's difficult to measure the strength or weakness of the items on the heavenly artifact ranking. The only criteria for their ranking is their importance to the world. The sacred drum ranks 9th because it is the 9th most important item to the world. As for strength or weakness, at that level, it no longer matters. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign explained. Then what about the first flame and the other top-ranked items? Lin Dong asked, but the sovereign's answer was unexpectedly brief. I don't know, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign replied. Aside from the sacred drum, I have no knowledge of the other items. What I do know is their attributes, and I rank them based on how important they are to the world. I know about the sacred drum because I walk the path of the drum. To understand the first flame, you must be someone at the very forefront of that path. Perhaps even the Fire Spirit clan doesn't know what the first flame is. The same applies to the other 10 items. I see. Lin Dong finally understood the true meaning of the heavenly artifact ranking. The items on the list were so intangible to ordinary people that they didn't even attract attention. The truth was simple. The things everyone knew were the things no one truly understood, and the truly vast things had already transcended the limits of size. Great artifacts are born, not made. I only comprehended the way of the sacred drum, so I can only pass on the way of the sacred drum to you. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign said to Lin Dong. The threat of the extraterritorial evil clan to the Great Thousand Worlds was not resolved in our time. I hope it will be eradicated in your generation. The sovereign's words echoed in Lin Dong's heart. He and the others knelt on one knee before the sovereign, shouting in unison, "We will do everything in our power to inherit the will of our predecessors and protect the world." Good, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign said, smiling. Now, I will pass on the way of the sacred drum to you. How much you understand depends on your own destiny. His gaze swept over the 4 people behind Lin Dong, finally resting on Xiao Yin. Hee, little tiger, I sense something from you. If I'm not mistaken, you have led armies before, with great experience. The only difference is that you draw strength directly from those armies, while a battle formation master harnesses the will of the army. Indeed, the tiger-devouring army once led by Little Yin directly infused the army's Yuan force into his own body to gain overwhelming combat power. This was akin to condensing the spiritual energy of an entire army into one individual in the Great Thousand Worlds. Of course, in the Great Thousand Worlds, it wasn't spiritual energy that was condensed, but combat intent, which was undoubtedly more ethereal and elusive, and much harder to master. Next, I hope you can also learn the Sacred Drum technique, said the Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign. Young one will definitely study the Sacred Drum technique and inherit the will of the Sacred Drum Senior, Little Yin replied. I wonder, how can one master the Sacred Drum technique? Lin Dong asked. The Sacred Drum technique is merely a method of controlling the Sacred Drum power. To learn it, you first need to truly understand the Sacred Drum power. The Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign explained. The Sacred Drum power is the true force of heaven and earth, Lin Dong remarked. Exactly. To learn the Sacred Drum power is to learn the force of heaven and earth, to control the force of heaven and earth. The Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign nodded, then continued, from here on, do exactly what I say. Yes. Lin Dong and Little Yin both cupped their hands toward the Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign. The two of them immediately retreated over 100 meters and sat cross-legged in mid-air. Seeing this, Little Mink, Ling Qingzhu, and Fin Yunzi quickly retreated as well, sitting cross-legged in other places in mid-air. Clearly, they too wished to attempt learning the Sacred Drum technique. The Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign nodded in satisfaction as he saw Lin Dong and the others sitting cross-legged over 100 meters away. Then, he spoke indifferently. The Sacred Drum power is, in essence, the power of heaven and earth. To control the power of heaven and earth, the first step is to merge yourself with heaven and earth, to make heaven and earth your own and yourself as heaven and earth. The first step is to abandon all of your own spiritual energy. When the words of the Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign reached Lin Dong and the others, Little Yin, Little Mink, and Fin Yunzi were all stunned. Especially Little Yin and Little Mink, who exchanged a glance, their brows furrowed. Though they had only been using spiritual energy derived from Yuan Force for a few years, this was the Great Thousand World, where spiritual energy was the core of every cultivator's power. Losing one's spiritual energy was almost equivalent to losing everything. Abandon all of one's spiritual energy? What did that mean? Moreover, to sever a connection with such a fundamental power wasn't something easily done. Was it self-mutilation? However, there were some who remained calm. That would be Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu, with Ling Qingzhu remaining the most composed and indifferent. After hearing the Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign's words, she almost instantly began to immerse her consciousness into the Supreme Sea. In the deepest depths of the endless Supreme Sea, a small divine soul sat cross-legged. This was Ling Qingzhu's divine soul, and at this moment, the divine soul was slowly relinquishing its connection to the Supreme Sea. But what Ling Qingzhu was doing wasn't an intentional severance. It was simply letting go, naturally. She was relinquishing even the connection with the Supreme Sea. Abandoning one's own power was something Ling Qingzhu had done before. Back in the heavenly mystic dimension, in order to cultivate the primordial perception technique, Ling Qingzhu had abandoned all her Yuan Force cultivation and, in doing so, gained the more supreme primordial force, a power that came from the dimension's dimension embryo. Ling Qingzhu knew that the Sacred Drum Heavenly Sovereign would not ask them to abandon the power they had cultivated over decades for no reason. His intention was to make them experience a power that was even higher than spiritual energy, or rather, to connect with some existence. That might be the location of the dimension embryo in the Great Thousand World. But in such a high-level world, far superior to lower dimensions, it would be inaccurate to describe it as merely a dimension embryo. A more accurate description would be the very core of the Great Thousand World. That was the true source of the power of heaven and earth. After Ling Qingzhu relinquished her connection to her spiritual energy, the vast Supreme Sea did not dissipate. Instead, it remained as calm as ever. This was because the Supreme Sea was not disturbed by any fluctuations. Everything remained as usual, as if there had never been any connection with Ling Qingzhu's divine soul. At this moment, it was likely that Ling Qingzhu's divine soul had completely disappeared within the Supreme Sea. Yet the sea itself would remain largely unperturbed. Seeing Ling Qingzhu sitting quietly in meditation, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign couldn't help but show a slight smile. He hadn't expected that the first to grasp his meaning would not be Lin Dong, but this quiet and serene woman who had always stayed by Lin Dong's side. As for the speed at which she comprehends the power of heaven and earth, I'm afraid even I wasn't as fast in my youth. It's a pity that the sacred drum path is not suited for her, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign said with a shake of his head as he looked at Ling Qingzhu. She should follow a different path in the 12 great paths of the grand ranking. After speaking, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign turned his gaze towards Lin Dong. At this moment, Lin Dong, like Ling Qingzhu, was sitting in silence with his eyes closed. However, from the spiritual energy constantly leaking from his body, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign could tell that Lin Dong was not as perfect as Ling Qingzhu in releasing his spiritual energy. It took Lin Dong about 2 hours to enter the same state as Ling Qingzhu. During this time, Little Yin and the others followed suit after seeing both Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu do the same. The main reason for this was that they noticed there was almost no spiritual energy leaking from Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu, as if they had successfully abandoned it. After the spiritual energy left their bodies, it didn't escape from the Supreme Sea, which was a strange phenomenon. Because of this unusual phenomenon, Little Yin and the others began to doubt whether they had misunderstood the sacred drum heavenly sovereign's words. After thinking it through for a while, they started to return to their sitting positions and attempted to enter a state similar to that of Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu, where they nearly forgot about their spiritual energy. Looking at the 5 individuals before him, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign nodded with some satisfaction. At the same time, he recalled an event from about 2 years ago, when an elder from the True Dragon clan, along with a young man, had come here. The young man had been interested in this sacred drum technique and called out the residual spirit of the sacred drum heavenly sovereign to begin learning the technique. That little guy should have been a talented youth from the True Dragon clan. I originally thought his talent was sufficient to comprehend the sacred drum technique and inherit it. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign murmured to himself. However, what a pity. That little guy gave his all, but in the end, all he could do was strike the sacred drum once. Time passed quietly. After about 2 hours, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign, seated upon the giant drum, finally raised his eyebrows. One of the 5 before him had completed their connection with the force of heaven and earth. That person was Ling Qingzhu. When she opened her eyes, a faint, clear light shimmered in her pupils, as though she could see through everything. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign looked at Ling Qingzhu, smiling. To have sensed the essence of heaven and earth's power in just 4 hours, such aptitude was extremely rare even in his ancient era, which showed how extraordinary Ling Qingzhu's talent was. While the sacred drum heavenly sovereign admired Ling Qingzhu's remarkable talent, Lin Dong, who had been sitting quietly, also slowly opened his eyes. When Lin Dong's eyes slowly opened, no overwhelming waves of energy erupted from his body. The flow of air and everything in the world seemed to remain unchanged. However, the feeling Lin Dong gave off was that if anyone were to cast their gaze upon him at this moment, they might feel as though he was an inherent part of this world, like a blade of grass rooted in the earth. Something so familiar that people rarely paid attention to it. This was the feeling Lin Dong gave off at that moment. To have grasped the essence of all things in just a few hours, your talent is not bad, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign said with a smile as he looked at Lin Dong. At this moment, Lin Dong did not exude any specific aura, and that absence of sensation was the true feeling of the world. This was the first trial one had to undergo to learn the sacred drum technique, to merge with heaven and earth. After merging with heaven and earth, the next step would be to control them. At that level, one could achieve the same control over heaven and earth as the heavenly supreme, where every action would be as natural as the changes in the world itself. Thank you, sacred drum heavenly sovereign, for guiding me in understanding the principles of heaven and earth. Lin Dong said calmly, expressing his gratitude. However, Lin Dong knew very well that what he had just touched upon was the power only a heavenly supreme could achieve, and even so, he was far from reaching the realm of controlling heaven and earth. At this moment, both Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu had completed their comprehension of the force of heaven and earth, while little Yin and the others were still immersed in their own understanding. However, it was clear they had not yet reached Lin Dong's level. The time for this old man may be limited, the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign thought with a sense of satisfaction as he looked at Lin Dong and Ying Qingzhu. Then he turned to Ying Qingzhu and said, "Your talent is even higher than I had imagined. If it weren't for the fact that you are not suited for the sacred drum path, I would have considered you as my successor today and would have passed on my thousands of years of insights before fading away into the world. However, I believe you are more suited for the way of the myriad phenomena among the 12 great paths. Senior, Qingzhu does not know about this way of the myriad phenomena. The way of the myriad phenomena is the closest to the central path of the heavens and earth. The central path is the foremost of the 12 great paths. The only thing I can tell you is this much. As for this path, you must rely on yourselves to ponder it further," said the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." Ling Qingzhu lightly nodded and expressed her gratitude to the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. The next step is the key to determining whether the sacred drum technique can be perfected. However, for those who have not reached the Heavenly Supreme Realm, attempting to peer into the 12 great paths is a risky endeavor, said the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. If successful, one can simultaneously grasp the sacred drum technique and possess the ability to control the heavens and earth as a heavenly supreme. However, if you fail, the cycle of the heavenly Tao will occur, and not only will you lose control over this ability, but you will also lose your qualification to advance into the heavenly supreme realm. Are you sure you want to inherit my sacred drum technique? The sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign asked Lin Dong. And remember, the sacred drum technique can only be inherited by 2 people. Have you decided who will receive the inheritance? Although the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign's words were somewhat unexpected to Lin Dong, he remained calm and quickly understood their meaning. He immediately made his decision. Sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign, I have already chosen the 2 who will inherit the sacred drum technique. Who are they? The sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign asked. One is my younger brother, Little Yin, and the other is me, Lin Dong said calmly. The choice Lin Dong made was not unexpected to the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. He smiled slightly, and with a flip of his hands, 2 faint light shadows appeared. These were miniature versions of the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign himself, clearly his divine souls. Lin Dong was slightly surprised because the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign had actually cultivated 2 divine souls. This was akin to having 2 primordial spirits or souls within one body. To an uninformed person, this might seem like schizophrenia, but Lin Dong understood that this was certainly not the case. This is the heavenly soul, said the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. Most people only know of the divine soul, but they are unaware of the superior heavenly soul. The heavenly soul is a stage every powerful being must go through when advancing to the heavenly supreme realm. The heavenly supreme is a realm where one controls the heavens and earth, and to achieve this, one must transform their divine soul into a heavenly soul. While the divine soul governs the center of a person's being, the heavenly soul governs the heavens and earth. When a heavenly supreme marks a certain area as their domain, their heavenly soul within them becomes the embryo of that area's dimension. The sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign's brief explanation allowed Lin Dong to understand the difference between the divine soul and the heavenly soul. However, Lin Dong still did not understand how the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign could possess 2 heavenly souls. Ordinary battle formation masters only know how to lead a powerful army and arrange it into various unpredictable formations. The strength of such a formation comes from the combined power of the army and the formation itself, but there is a flaw. If a battle formation master loses their army, they are like a bird without wings or a wolf without claws, said the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong nodded. During the Great Thousand Assembly, if the Little Drum King had not been assisted by the Pagoda Divine Army, it would have been impossible for him to display such formidable combat strength. A more powerful battle formation master may not have an army, and although their personal combat strength would be weaker than when leading one, they would still be formidable, the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign continued. But the most powerful battle formation master is a combination of the above 2 types. This kind of master can fight alone while simultaneously commanding a powerful formation to defend. Multitasking? Lin Dong asked. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign shook his head, looking at the two heavenly souls in his hands. It's not multitasking, it's two hearts working in tandem. Two hearts? Does that mean these two heavenly souls are independent of each other? Lin Dong asked. Exactly. These two divine souls each make independent judgments based on the situation they face. Are all truly powerful battle formation masters capable of having two heavenly souls? Lin Dong asked again. Do you think it's so easy to condense two heavenly souls? To condense the second heavenly soul is even more difficult than advancing to the heavenly supreme. In my era, there were only 9 people in the entire Great Thousand World who could condense two heavenly souls. 7 of them were battle formation masters, and I was one of them, said the sacred drum heavenly sovereign. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong began to understand the difficulty of condensing two heavenly souls. From a numerical standpoint, it was clear that the number of heavenly supreme experts in the Great Thousand World far exceeded 9, likely even more than 90. As I mentioned earlier, my time is probably running out, said the sacred drum heavenly sovereign, holding the two heavenly souls. All my insights into the sacred drum technique are contained within these two heavenly souls. After finishing his words, the ethereal figure of the sacred drum heavenly sovereign slowly dissipated. What remained were 2 tiny beams of light, each no larger than a palm. One of them shot towards the meditating little yin, while the other hovered in front of Lin Dong. This is one of the 2 minds I refined 1,000 years ago. I hope you can fully comprehend it. You have already completed the first step I mentioned, which is to sense the essence of the world. The second step is to control the world like a heavenly supreme expert, and the third step, the sacred drum method, must be built upon the second, the beam of light. Before Lin Dong spoke, I also mentioned that you are not yet a heavenly supreme, and if you fail, it could prevent you from ever reaching that realm. I ask you in the name of the heavenly Tao of the sacred drum, are you sure you want to attempt the second step? Upon hearing this, Lin Dong narrowed his eyes. He knew that the sacred drum heavenly sovereign was not joking. If he failed, he could lose his chance to ever enter the heavenly supreme realm. Not being able to reach that level would mean he would never have the strength to challenge the Ice Spirit clan. However, if he succeeded, not only would he retain his chance to become a heavenly supreme, but he would gain its power ahead of time, even if it might not yet match that of a true heavenly supreme. 2 choices. One was to advance steadily, gradually improving his strength, which would likely take decades to be strong enough to confront the Ice Spirit clan. The other was to take a gamble. If he succeeded in inheriting the sacred drum method, his power would skyrocket, and he might be able to challenge the Ice Spirit clan within a dozen years. Riches from danger. Everything depended on whether he dared to gamble. I am willing to gamble my future on this. Lin Dong's voice rang out resolutely. His decision was to attempt the second step of the sacred drum, heavenly sovereign's method. I must also tell you that you need to absorb my heavenly soul into your supreme seed to peer into the sacred drum method. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign continued. Hearing this, Lin Dong's expression changed once more. He stared in shock at the heavenly soul of the sacred drum heavenly sovereign. To absorb the souls of others into his supreme sea was no different from devouring them, and such acts were usually associated with evil sects. It seems you don't yet fully understand the mysteries of heaven and earth, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign said, clearly noticing Lin Dong's concerns. She then turned to Ling Qingzhu and asked, "What do you think?" From the perspective of the origin of all things, heaven and earth are one, including the human body. Even the divine soul is part of this universe. This part is merely assembled in a special way, forming humans and all living beings. When these beings acquire wisdom, they can reshape everything in heaven and earth with their thoughts. If this reshaping does not violate the essence of heaven and earth, it is the righteous path. However, if one changes things in a way that goes against the essence of heaven and earth, it is the evil path. For instance, when one uses any means to obtain what they desire, even at the cost of slaughtering innocent lives, Ling Qingzhu explained, then turned to Lin Dong. The heavenly soul is the key to controlling heaven and earth, and it is also part of the whole. If the elder is willing to merge the heavenly soul with your supreme sea, and you consent, this becomes a harmonious union of heaven, earth, and all things, in line with the essence of the world, and is the righteous path. He well said. Your understanding of the essence of heaven and earth is indeed profound. The sacred drum heavenly sovereign said with a pleased smile after hearing Ling Qingzhu's explanation. She looked at Lin Dong, and a white light began to emanate from the heavenly soul. Extend your finger, the sacred drum heavenly sovereign instructed. At her command, Lin Dong slowly extended his finger. After hearing Ling Qingzhu's explanation, he had gained a deeper understanding of the mysteries of heaven and earth, and now he began to realize that this understanding might be entirely devoid of any emotions. As Lin Dong extended his finger, the heavenly soul of the sacred drum heavenly sovereign also slowly extended its pinky. The two fingers, one large and one small, touched. At that moment, Lin Dong felt his supreme sea gently ripple, as if something had entered. When he came to his senses, he found that the heavenly soul that had been hovering before him was gone, though he hadn't noticed when it had disappeared. Beside Lin Dong, Ling Qingzhu stood quietly. Not far away, Little Yin and the others were still meditating with their eyes closed. At the same time, Lin Dong had a vague feeling, as if the heavenly soul wasn't actually in front of him, nor in front of Little Yin. Could the presence of the sacred drum heavenly sovereign have been nothing more than a momentary illusion? Lin Dong only knew one thing. After comprehending the mysteries of heaven and earth, everything in the world seemed no different to him. He didn't care about distinguishing the differences between things. All matter had become equal at this moment. They were merely different forms of energy condensation, and this condensation didn't require any intentional effort. This was the way of nature. Just as Lin Dong was puzzled, a familiar voice echoed in his heart. To practice the sacred drum technique, besides merging my heavenly soul into your supreme sea's divine soul, you need to know one more thing. When my heavenly soul is merged by another, the evil demon heavenly emperor, whom I have suppressed for tens of thousands of years, will be freed. The words of the sacred drum, heavenly sovereign, reverberated in Lin Dong's mind. Before Lin Dong could process them, an incredibly terrifying fluctuation began to spread from the massive drum beneath their feet. Boom! In that instant, the entire continent, spanning millions of miles, trembled violently. The vibrations were caused by the drum's surface shaking, and the shockwave from this was far more powerful than when Lin Dong had previously tested it. Not good. Lin Dong snapped back to reality, instinctively grabbing hold of Ling Qingzhu beside him. At the same time, a vast amount of spiritual energy exploded forth, enveloping Little Yin and the others who were 100 meters away. Then, Lin Dong activated the power of the space ancestor symbol, pulling Ling Qingzhu and the others with him as they disappeared. In the blink of an eye, silver light spread out from the perimeter of the massive drum, and the figures of Lin Dong and his companions flashed into view. They had indeed retreated in time from the center of the drum. The scene that followed was too terrifying. Boom! At the moment when Lin Dong and the others retreated tens of thousands of miles away, the massive drum surface, which extended for over 100,000 miles, finally couldn't withstand the terrifying force erupting from within and exploded, creating a huge hole over 1,000,000 miles wide. Immediately below this giant hole, a monstrous figure soared into the sky, accompanied by a massive distortion of space. It was a black pillar of demonic energy, over 100,000 miles tall. At the same time, a fierce and murderous demonic voice tore through the void, resounding through heaven and earth.